He turned water into wine, I turned whiskey into songs. Too many second chances, too many too far gones. Gave me grace along the way, took my heart and led me home. Don't you see? It's a God thing for me. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Welcome to our very special Heartland Journal Summer Series, where we have dug deep into the archives and unearthed some of our most popular and even controversial shows of the past, many that haven't seen the light of day in years. We hope you enjoy what we have in store for you. Until I return to my post as host of the Heartland Journal podcast, this is Steve Abramowitz wishing you a safe and sane summer. And as always, glory to God. Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. On this show, we are focused on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community and lovers of truth. Welcome to our People in the News episode, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with Martha Byrne. Martha is a three-time Emmy Award-winning actress, writer, and producer. Her most recognizable role was on the CBS daytime soap opera As the World Turns. She also starred in General Hospital Crisis on NBC, wrote for The Bold and Beautiful, and produced several award-winning shows. Martha is a philanthropist, raising millions of dollars for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. She is the wife of a wrongly convicted former NYPD detective and private investigator, Michael McMahon, who got set up by Chinese CCP foreign agents and thrown under the bus by the FBI, allegedly. Michael is one of the most highly decorated police officers at NYPD, with over 75 commendations and the Combat Cross, NYPD's second highest award. They were home with their three children, Michael Terrence, Maxwell Vincent, and Anne Marie, and his elderly mother-in-law, when 10 federal agents came to arrest him. Martha is bringing attention to the case and is kind enough to come on the MCV and give us an update. Hello, Mrs. Byrne. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for that introduction. It's always nice to be get better up there. So thank you for talking about my past and where we are and what we can dive into today. It's pretty intense.
I feel like I'm amongst soap opera, TV, daytime royalty. So thank you for taking the time and coming out here.
Oh, it's wonderful. We have the best fans ever. So they've been incredible through this whole process. So a shout out to all the fans who are tuning in, who watch and have supported me for decades. They're incredible people.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, 20 years on TV, you're gonna love that. So that's wonderful. Well, before we talk about your career and your current situation, please tell us about St. Jude. Here we are at Christmas time.
Yes.
What is your involvement? How long have you been doing it, and why is it such a great cause?
When I was a child actor, my mother loved Danny Thomas, and my mom said, if you're successful, always give back to somebody who's in need. So my mom picked St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and I carried that with me my whole life. And when I went back to As the World Turns, when I actually got on As the World Turns and went back in 93, I made a vow to St. Jude. I did what Danny Thomas did and said, if you get me back on television, I will raise as much money as possible for the cause. And about a week later, I got a phone call to come back to As the World Turns. I'd been off for a few years, and I immediately started raising money. And I think to date about 15 million, maybe more. Wow. Through events for soap opera fans who are amazing, and just local events. And I am humbled to have been on the advisory board for St. Jude as well, to help come up with ideas to raise money. And Danny Thomas is such an inspiration to me, because he's one man who changed the world, and he changed and saved children's lives. And through his work, I'm inspired by that. So I never want to hear someone say, well, you can't do it. Yes, you can if you really want to. So I've just carried that with me through my entire life. And it's been an honor to be part of the organization. They are the most incredible scientists and positive people. Going to the hospital has been inspiring to me and joyful to meet the children and the doctors and the nurses and the advances, to be a part of that, even in this minuscule way. is an honor. So
And
the
they
organization
literally
has
say
been
that
great
every
to me.
dollar helps, and you've done
It does.
15 million or more of them, so you've helped
Yeah,
immensely. So
I hope
that's
so.
great for you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, okay, so 2021 winner grand prize gold award best script Anacostia. 29 episodes, 2011, 2021, 10 years, directed 6, writing credits for 10, I think. Though the odds are overwhelming for many who call the forgotten part of DC home, the characters of Anacostia remain hopeful, drawing strength from their complicated yet resilient friendships. Tell us about your time on that show, since everyone knows you
So
from the other one.
when I left As the World Turns, I really wanted to go behind the scenes. So I started writing for Bold and the Beautiful, the soap opera. I created my own show called Gotham, which got in, you know, which was the first kind of digital soap opera, along with Anacostia,
Huh.
where people were like, "What are you doing online doing TV shows?" And that really exploded, obviously. And when Anthony Anderson, who created Anacostia, I met him at an event, said, "Would you like to be on my show?" I said, "Sure." And they had no money, they really were just a grassroots organization to create, and I wanted to give back. That's what I do. So I joined the cast and then started writing for the show, and then did some directing on the show, and then got an Emmy as an actress on the show. So it's just, I love when people are so creative and you can just support them in their careers. I've been so blessed in my life. So to be able to give back like that has been also a pleasure.
How can people see that show? Is it on Amazon or Hulu or
It's
some of the
on
streaming?
Amazon. It's on YouTube. You can find it everywhere. Anacostia, the series. And it is really such an incredible show about Anacostia, which is right outside of DC, and the struggles that go on there. And I played a pimp. So when I was offered a job, they're like, what do you want to play, the good girl? I said, well, I played the good girl along most of my life. Let me play something kind of fun and like a little darker. And I got an Emmy for it. So I think I was a good choice.
I liked it too.
But it also, it gives it the truth to what's really happening in that society, and how the struggles are real. But we had a lot of fun. And again, I was happy to give back to people who have given so much to me. Big fans, by the way, big soap fans behind that show. So
All right. And everyone knows this, but as the world turns, you were Lily
yes,
Walsh Schneider for what IMDb said 932 episodes. You say probably much more.
I
From
think so.
1985 to 2010. That's amazing. What was
Mhm.
life like being a soap opera star, getting married, and having kids all at the same time?
It was amazing. It's the best job ever if you want to be a mom and you want to have a normal life, because you know where you're going every day. You know where your paycheck is coming from. You work with amazing people. And when I had my first son, I was off for 6 months. I was written out of the show. They really incorporate family into that medium, and it's a medium like no other. Soap operas are in your living room every single day, so people feel like they know you, they're family. I grew up on that show. I had my first kiss, like real life kiss, on that show when I was 15 and 16, I think it was. So it was family to me. And to have fans that actually remember scenes today that I did in 1985 or 89 or 92 or 93, that is an honor to me also, that I made people feel something for what I did with my work. And as an actress, that's what you want. You want people to feel like you are a real person, right? That's the goal. So I had an incredible run there. And then I'm still contacted by fans every day, as you can see on Twitter and Facebook. They're amazing. It's a wonderful medium, soap operas. It's a loss. It's losing a lot of its viewership, which is a shame, because people need them. I met a woman at the diner once, and she held my hand and she was crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "You got me through cancer.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I every day I looked forward to seeing you on my screen, and it made me feel better just to see you, and you're in that crazy town of Oakdale, right?" So we there's certain levels of different things we did for different people, and it was an honor and a gift to have been a part of that.
Yeah, the only time I've ever heard someone say that before was a morning show anchor in Savannah, Georgia, who they always look
Mm.
forward to her, and she loved dogs. But anyway, so how did you and Michael meet?
So I met through a friend. It was 1993, yes, and we were going out. Decided to move back from California, and we went out with the girls. And she said, "My cousin's coming, and a couple of his, friend cousins." And he walked in. My husband walked in, and I went, "Who is that?" And they said his name is Michael McMahon. I said, "Well, he's an Irish guy. Let me go up to him and say I'm Irish too." See if that kind of breaks the ice. And we never looked back. We were engaged 6 months later, and he was NYPD. He was in the street crime unit at the time at the NYPD. So that was in '93 when the crack wars were going on, gang wars were going on. He was in plain clothes. He was in shootouts all the time. He was always busy. So the street crime unit, just so people who are listening, back in '93, it was put together as the top elite cops in the NYPD to go into areas that were suffering greatly, whether the robbery patterns, rape patterns, burglaries, whatever was going on. These guys, taxi cabs were getting robbed a lot, like livery cabs were getting murdered, drivers. So they would swarm the area with these plainclothes guys and literally clean up New York. And he was every day. He was making arrests and making sure that the streets were safe and taking illegal guns off the street. So that's when we first met him. That's what was going on in his life. Wow. And he was actually in a shooting in Times Square on New Year's Eve, where there was a robbery, like with Uzis. They were robbing a clothing store on New Year's Eve. Okay. It's about 10 p.m. Call comes over the radio. My husband in plain clothes with his partner go to Times Square. There's a shootout through the front window. This is ball's going to start going, and they're exchanging gunfire. And my husband's partner was shot in the leg, and they got the guys. Okay, it's all caught on video. I've seen the video. It's unbelievable to watch. I get a phone call. I'm home, and he says, "I'm going to be on the news tonight." I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, there was a shooting in Times Square, and I'm okay. Everything's fine." And sure enough, there he was on camera, with the ambulance, putting his partner on the ambulance to get him safe. So these are the kind of everyday occurrences that were happening in our young marriage.
Unbelievable.
I was on television, and I was obviously, high profile person. And in that world, we were going to the Emmys and we were doing all kinds of fun things. And then we had our first son. And then the rest is history. We have 3 beautiful children who are now 25, 21, and 17. And our lives have been blessed beyond measure, I have to say, but very different. Our careers are extremely different, but somehow we worked perfectly together. He's an amazing man.
Okay. And the show was filmed in New York.
New York.
So, yeah. So there you are, living your life, well-known celebrity, probably go out to dinner. Everybody says, hello, sign this, decorated officer, and then 10 federal agents. We had a former FBI agent on here, and he told us the FBI's favorite time of day is 6 a.m. Was it 6 a.m.?
It was. It was dark outside. The dog started barking, and you hear a banging on your front door. And, my husband always said, if someone's coming to your door at that hour, it's never good, right? It's somebody's dead, usually, something like that. Like this is not good. But you're just kind of foggy, you're not really paying attention. Like, what could this be? And they're banging on the door, and you see the lights out the front of the door. The dog's going crazy. My son is downstairs, I think, but I don't know this yet. And they keep saying Michael McMahon, Michael McMahon. Now, as a mother, to hear that, the first thing I thought was that my son was dead, because I couldn't imagine why the police would be there any other reason other than something with my children. I mean, that's your first instinct. And for about at least a minute, maybe, I don't know how long it was now, I thought my 21-year-old, at the time he was 18, I believe, was dead. And once my husband realized it was the FBI, they came in the house. They were very cordial. They were actually very nice. And I thought it was a joke. I really thought it was a joke. And once they confirmed Mike, it was Michael, they walked with him to his bedroom. I was sitting there talking to the agents. They were I said, what's going on here? And they said he was involved with a government, something about foreign government. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, my husband can't hear this. He has no idea why they're here. They still haven't told him why he's being arrested. They never did, by the way, when they were here. They never told him. They just took him away. But they never went to his office. He offered his computers, his phones, his notes, everything he has in his office, his guns, and they didn't want him. They didn't take them. They never went to his office.
Why didn't they just call your lawyer and have him turn himself in? Or was he a flight risk of some kind, or were they afraid that he was a gun nut?
Absolutely not. I mean, they never took his guns. They didn't even. We gave our guns over to the local police the next day. Like, they didn't care. They were only here for whatever agenda they were here for. Okay, if this was a national security case, Why are they not Why are they not going into his office? Why are they not looking into his? He offered it up. He still has they never took his phone. He still has his phone. You know, there's so many things about this case which are insane, but you have to understand something, that the fact that they didn't call him on the phone, he has worked on federal cases for the government. Okay. He was an approved federal investigator for federal cases. He has worked on at least 10 or 12 federal cases throughout his career. He's done probably 500 cases between his NYPD cases and his private investigative cases. They knew he was not a flight risk. They knew he was not a danger. They were having open conversations in our house like we were, pretty much very casual. They chose to come here and do that. Now, here's the thing. They have had his phone number since April of 2017. We know that let's go back for a minute, because I think this is important to understand kind of the little bit of the background of my husband. So when he was on the NYPD, he had a severe car accident in 2001. He had a telephone pole 50 miles an hour where he was severely injured, where he had to retire from the NYPD. He became a private investigator. He then became the most sought after private investigator in the tri-state area. I'm not joking about that. Like, he worked on some of the most high profile cases. If I said some of his clients, your mouth would drop, but they were so incredibly powerful and famous, and they wanted him, okay? Because he was so good at his job. The fact that this case comes up in 2016, he gets a call, again, very random. This is a routine case from an American company, translation company in Queens. They were looking for a man who had stolen money from a Chinese construction company, but was laundering the money here in the States. And they needed a licensed private investigator in New Jersey. Okay. He had been recommended, my husband, by a lawyer in New Jersey for this job. He was paid by a US bank check. He meets with his clients at Panera Bread, who came in to talk to him. He meets with them at a law firm in New Jersey, which he was working out of at the time, which is earshot of lawyers. And he's having conversations with his client. He does his due diligence. He gets background checks, all public information, anything to do with real estate purchases in California, New Jersey, LLCs, and he's doing his job. Now, here's the thing. This is what the government wants you to believe. Are you ready for this? He gets that phone call from the business in Queens. He meets his client at a Panera Bread, and that person tells him, he recruits my husband and says, I want you to be part of a harassment campaign to repatriate someone to go back to China. You have to bother him. You have to do this. You have to do that. My husband leaves that meeting, has another meeting with them at a law firm where two people at the front desk plus lawyers walking by as close as I am here, and has a conversation with his clients. My husband then picks up the phone, hires two former NYPD detectives to work with him on this case to do surveillance, speaks to two federal agents about the case who he knew, discussed it, notified the local police 5 times every day he was doing surveillance, did reports, he did invoices for cash, he documented everything, okay? April 2017, his last day of surveillance is over, doesn't think about it again, pays out all his money to the people that he owes for their jobs. He walks away with about $6,000, okay? They want you to believe that my husband would sacrifice his business, his family, his career, betray his country for $6,000. If that's not the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life, I don't know what is. So it is beyond the scope. So there was no evidence. Every single piece of evidence supported this fact that he was hired for a civil matter. He was never asked to do anything illegal. The people that he surveilled never saw him. This is beyond overreach, this case. So of course we're going to fight it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it turns out that the company that did hire him had ties to the Chinese Communist Party. He obviously didn't know that from those conversations you're talking about, but that was the string, I guess, that they pulled on and led to these problems, regardless of the $6,000.
Here's the thing. Here's the deal. If you're hired by, it says, he was, first of all, he was found not guilty on count one. So the meat of the case, he was found not guilty of. He was found not guilty of conspiring to violate failure to register, Foreign Agents Registration Act. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
That means the government could not prove that he was hired by a foreign government. Let's talk about that. Second of all, the person that he met with at Panera Bread used an alias. Okay. The rest of the people, but the government knew they were here. So at my husband's trial, it came out, and we knew this because of other investigation work for a lot of reporters had talked about this, that MSS officers, they're called Chinese police, they were here all over the country. They were taking classes at Houston at colleges. They were taking classes in Connecticut. They were here as our guests. They said who they were. They were police officers, prosecutors. They were meeting with electric vehicle companies, apparently, potentially. They were all over the country, and only the government knew that. Okay, the government knew a lot more than anybody else in 2016. You got to remember, this is 2016, by the way. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, that if this person that my husband met with was he was here, he had been here in Houston, he had been apparently all over the country, allegedly. Why was he allowed in? He repatriated somebody in 2015 when he was in Houston. Why was he allowed back in this country and not monitored? Why were any of those people who came here on these visas not monitored? So what happens is, when the head of the FBI says that these people were acting like an organized crime syndicate, and they put my family in danger, the minute that person landed in this country, and the minute that the FBI knew that these were people who were doing something shady, which, what happened at trial is they showed a video at the airport where the FBI agent just lets him leave. They knew that he had been involved in something potentially shady, and we watched him just let him fly out of the country. And then he came back later and they interviewed him.
Martha, doesn't the U.S. government have a legal obligation to notify someone if they are being targeted by a foreign group?
Well,
when did the U.S. government know that Michael was being targeted, and why wasn't he notified?
Great question. So I saw Richard Grinnell in D.C. last year, who was the former head director of national intelligence. I saw him in D.C. and I told him a very brief summary of the story. And he said, your husband and every single U.S. law enforcement member connected to this case should have been given a defense briefing. He goes, I've done them all the time. He goes, I would do them all the time when I was the head of DNI. I said, well, why wasn't he? And he said, well, someone must have decided not to give him one. Now, I want you to understand something. The FBI spoke to the admitted Chinese agents, the actual criminals, over their 4-year investigation. They never once spoke to any of the U.S. law enforcement connected to this case. 2 federal agents and 3 former NYPD detectives. They never spoke to them over the 4 years, but they spoke to the criminals, and they trusted the criminals. And at our trial, everybody lied. They all lied to the FBI. Do you want to know something? My husband was the only person in this case who told the truth. The only one. The FBI lied on the criminal complaint. They made up a story. On day 1, they started falsifying evidence out of the gate. And I started going, the lies that happened in this trial were shocking. I couldn't believe they were doing it. They were literally making up a story because they had no evidence against my husband.
That seems to be what they do. So they come walking in, and Anne Marie is quoted as saying, can you please tell them, the FBI, that they scared me? What about your mom? She was elderly, right? Is it your mother?
She was my mom, and she's in an apartment outside on the property. So thank God they didn't go into her apartment and scare
Which they
her.
normally would do if they were doing a full search to find out something going on. So obviously they just wanted the man, and they didn't really want the evidence.
Clearly.
We had a guest on named Sarah Maccabee, and her husband was a deputy sheriff here in Williamson County who also got raided at 6 a.m. But her husband, the sheriff of January 6th, was already in jail when they did that. It seems more like they were intimidating her, maybe to stay quiet, than to look for incriminating evidence. Was there an element of that for you to intimidate you to not go public or stay quiet? Obviously, neither one of you took it, if that was the message, but did they try to say, hey, don't say anything, it'll go worse for you?
Let's put it this way. There's a lot of things that after this case is over, which will be horrifying to the public, which has happened in this case, that I am shocked that the press has not followed up on a lot of leads that came right out in the courtroom. I don't understand. Like, how can they not be protecting U.S. citizens? They never told the local police about these repatriations going on. The FBI did not share intel. You know, after 9/11, we learned that it's important for them to share intel with local police, whoever's being targeted to help keep us safe. And they never did that. And I was the one. I went into local police. I spoke to private investigators. I spoke with the New Jersey Private Investigators Association and said, guys, if this can happen to him, he did nothing illegal. He literally committed no crime. Surveillance is not illegal. Arresting a PI for surveillance and background checks is like, I say this, arresting a plumber for changing a pipe.
Yeah, I think you're onto it right there, and I want to pursue that line of thinking. So the New York Post wrote this up. That's a local newspaper for you. For everybody else, it's whatever, Rupert Murdoch publication. But they said Michael McMahon was preparing to go back to work as a private investigator this week, certain that a jury in Brooklyn federal court would find him innocent of charges that he was spying for China. The decorated former NYPD sergeant, who has worked as a licensed private investigator in New Jersey for 2 decades, said he was blindsided when they voted to convict him and 2 others Tuesday of stalking a New Jersey couple on behalf of the communist country. What was the jury thinking, and who were the other 2 defendants? 55-year-old Zhao Yong, 66, and Zhang Chongying, 27, were found guilty of stalking and a related conspiracy charge. I feel betrayed by the Department of Justice, Michael said. Were they politically targeted him or running cover for some competing Chinese company they liked maybe versus the one he worked for? Something like that?
No, I think that, so just to be clear, the other defendant, there was 18 months after my husband finished his work on this case and just walked away, done. Nothing was done again. 18 months later, someone put a threatening note on the door of this gentleman. Meanwhile, their addresses were public information. Nothing my husband provided was not public. The guy had been served even on a civil lawsuit at his residence in 2018. So everybody knew it was very easy to get this address. But do you know that they charged my husband with that? They charged my husband with something that happened 18 months later on that property. I mean, this is insane.
They're piling on, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. After thinking about this for 3 years, everybody says, why him? Why your husband, right? So in the Southern District of New York, this case is in the Eastern District. In the Southern District of New York, the same exact time frames, 2016 to 21, I believe, there was also another fox hunt case going on at the same exact time, where private investigators were knocking on people's doors. They had 12 Chinese names of people on the wanted list to go locate, took their pictures. They really did a lot more than anything my husband did. Okay. They were never charged. Okay. They were never charged. Those PIs were never charged. My husband was the only one charged at the time. He's the only American. He's the only US citizen. I hate to say that they made him the poster child for this, and it's wrong. You don't destroy a man's life. Oh shoot!
You're still there.
Okay. You don't see something popping up on my phone, do you?
No.
No. Okay.
So let me. I don't want to run out of time with you. There's so much to this, but the Post said scapegoat in the DOJ's historic first case to combat Operation Fox Hunt, the Chinese Communist Party anti-corruption campaign that targets Chinese nationals abroad, as well as dissidents who speak out against the party. That's who this would be. It targeted former government. No, sorry, but
no, he was not a dissident. Well, no, but he wasn't a dissident. I think that's very important because they did something last week in DC where they put my husband's picture up at the China Commission, I guess, saying that this man who he was following was not a dissident. He was a wanted criminal. He had defrauded. He had lied on his visa application. Was laundering tens of millions of dollars here in this country. He had a $15 million civil lawsuit against him that was partial judgment against him. This man was not a dissident. Here's the question I have. It targeted former government officials and others suspected of economic crimes against China. But here's where I get like, red flag.
New York's most storied private investigator, Richard Bo Dietl, vigorously denied doing any work for the Chinese firm. The Post revealed earlier this month how Bo Dietl sold half of his security company to a
Yep.
Chinese security firm whose boss, Liu Wu, is said to by sources to be a Chinese intelligence agent. I'm going to be his worst nightmare, Richard Bo Dietl said of Mayor Bill de Blasio in 2017 when he launched a mayoral campaign challenge to de Blasio. Could this whole thing be political targeting that netted your husband?
I have no idea. I mean, I went to Bo Dietl as soon as this happened. I said, "You better be careful. Like they may, tried to warn him. I've been warning every PI. You have to understand something. Bo Dietl sold his company to a Chinese firm. He was in China. He was in business with them. This is nowhere in the same stratosphere of that. It is my husband's career and he did nothing. He was paid by an American check. He did a few days of work. He literally worked 5 days on this and that was it. So to put him even with Bo Dietl in the same category is wrong. I There's a lot of the fact that listen, the FBI knew in 2017 that PIs were being targeted and used. And in April 2017, the FBI had my husband's information and they never came to him. Do you realize if they had come to him in 2017, any crime that happened regarding this case that happened after that could have been prevented? These people were still harassed. Things still happened to them. The FBI chose to speak to the criminals. Do you understand something? If you're ignoring your own law enforcement, you're ignoring your own federal, if you're keeping them out of the case deliberately because you want to be a secret agent and not a civil servant, which is what you're supposed to do and share information, we all get hurt. The fact that I had the press outside my house and they were following me and taking pictures of my children and taking pictures in the front of my house. I mean, it is not a crime. It is bothersome, but you understand, my husband was half a mile away from the person's house. They never saw it. How can you be charged with interstate stalking when you never left New Jersey? The subjects never saw
I
you.
think it was politically motivated. I mean, I remember very clearly the decision that the state and the federal prosecutors chose not to bring criminal charges against de Blasio or his aides for campaign finance activities. And Dietl told Governor Cuomo he should name an independent prosecutor. He literally said, I want him to have an independent investigation on the civil aspect of campaign finance. The law's been violated. That would definitely get his attention, no doubt. And he was a Fox guy, obviously a right-wing kind of opinionated, guy, so well-known, non-Democrat in the most vicious political targeting era of our lifetime. So I'm curious if they just went after politically inconvenient investigators in the New York City area to basically give de Blasio a pass. I guess we'll never really
I don't know. Well, listen, trust me. I will know because I will find out exactly what happened here. There is zero excuse. This is a failed FBI operation. All the people, the actual the people that masterminded this fled the country on the FBI's watch. They were here. They could have grabbed them. Okay, they could have opportunities to grab these people, and they fled. And you just go after a hero who sacrificed his entire life for this country, who has done nothing but be a hero, run into burning buildings, take on gunfire. What they did to us. Here's the thing that really, really irks me as one of many things. They say he did this for money. Okay. In 2016, we had $1 million house, no mortgage. I mean, I didn't want to. I wish I didn't have to say this because but they put everything else out there. Why not? We had no debt. We had money in the bank. We're both semi-retired. I'd had a 40-year plus or 30-year plus career in the entertainment industry. To say that he would do anything for money is a joke, by the way, in 2016, 17. He loved what he did. Do you realize that he's done more pro bono work as a private investigator for people who have been wrongly accused of crimes? He stopped a robbery of an elderly woman last year at our bank without his guns because he turned in his guns. But he turned around, he saw something was going wrong, and he stopped that robbery. He is the epitome of what our world needs more of. And for them to attack him like this is unforgivable.
Yeah.
To sit in a courtroom and hear them lie every single day and smear him made me sick to my
Yeah.
stomach.
I would take one
And
of
I
him
said
over
it.
1,000
And
of
I
those
said it.
agents. I mean, he
I
earned
said it.
78 medals and citations for bravery, including the
Exactly.
Combat Cross, the department's second highest honor. He grew up in Rockland County
Exactly.
as one of 9 children. His grandmother was the house matron for a firehouse in Washington Heights, and both his
She was.
grandfather and uncle were
She
firemen
was.
there. He always wanted to
Yep.
be a cop, sitting in an entrance exam at 16. His older
He
brother,
did.
Brian, is also a retired NYPD detective. A
He
younger
did.
brother, Steven, is currently working for the, I mean, they make movies about guys like this, not the
I know.
bureaucrats who are. So I'm unfortunately we're out of time here, but you said we are fighting to the end. That's what you said.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
what's next? What's next for you two?
Well, we just filed motions to overturn the verdict. We're waiting for the judge's reply. It was powerful. We cited all the missteps and what the lies that they told at trial and how they didn't prove their case. On day one, they said they were going to prove all these things about my husband being an unlawful person, promised the judge that they were going to bring witnesses to do that. They never did. We were not allowed to show his interrogation video, which exonerated him. We were not allowed to talk about a civil lawsuit. We weren't even allowed to talk about his career at this trial. If you're being accused of being an enemy of this country, you should be able to show anything that shows that you would never do that. And we weren't able to do that. So we're waiting on the judge's response. She was there. She saw that. She saw the jurors were sleeping a lot of the time. There was CCP propaganda was put on the door of one of the jurors during our deliberations on day 2. There's a lot about this case that has a lot of problems, but I trust that the judge will make this right. So we're waiting for that. And if you want to hear and help us at all, it's the Pipe Hitter Foundation.org, pipehitterfoundation.org, who we support. Michael McMahon, more about his story there. And we're so grateful that you're to be on shows like this to get the truth out, because they have to stop using my husband and my family as a poster child for their own political agendas. This is disgusting. And he's a hero who did nothing wrong. It's a shame. It's a disgrace. And it should never have happened. And we will help other people in the future if they ever are faced with this, because nobody should ever have to deal with this. And then what they've done to my children and how they traumatized them. I don't know how they sleep at night. And I swear to you, I don't know if any of them have children, because that is unforgivable. What they've done to my children, who are now incredible and so strong, is as a mother, I will never forgive them for that. And they need to be held accountable if they lied to get there. If they lied their way to get there, and they lied on criminal complaints, and they lied maybe to the grand jury, we don't know. What did they tell the grand jury? If they're lying on public documents, if they're lying on documents that you and I can see, what's happening behind closed doors? Maybe someday we'll find out.
Yeah, and what they didn't say in that trial was that Zhu was a former official in Wuhan who had fled China amid allegations of corruption. Wuhan, as in coronavirus 19, Wuhan lab, China.
He was a member of the CCP. He was a member of the CCP. So here's what's the irony, is that he had been a member of the CCP in China, and now they're saying that the CCP is harassing him. You know, it's like they have to pick a side. Our government has to pick a side. You're throwing a parade for Xi Jinping in San Francisco, and people are getting beaten up on the streets for protesting him, and we're not doing anything to help those people who are trying to do the right thing. Or is he the guy running Foxconn operations and repatriations? Like, we have to decide if we want anything to change in this country. The government should be speaking to the PIs who have been used, start educating local law enforcement of how to look for a sign. First of all, tell the local communities you may have somebody wanted in your town, or at least monitor it. You know, if the FBI had just gone to the local law enforcement and said, by the way, if anything happens on X Street, Y Street, Z Street, call us. Why? Just want to keep an eye out. We wouldn't be talking today.
They're certainly not playing fair and picking the wrong side. They should be with the heroes, obviously, not with
exactly
the enemy of our people.
Exactly.
But Martha, we are totally out of time here. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I want to stay in touch, though, and let us know how this progresses. We'll have you back again. Did you tell everyone what your Twitter handle was?
Martha Byrne 10, which is the 10, and then Martha Byrne on Facebook, just my professional page. I put lots of updates there and lots of pictures, and if I can get my husband tonight, I might have him come on and go live with me tonight to see. I'm gonna try.
Awesome.
I'm gonna try, but thank you.
Well, thanks again for coming on with us. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
God bless and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and God bless to you too. It's going to be a great 2024.
Okay.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
right. Well, welcome to the Steve and Steve segment of our show where we discuss what we just heard. Steve, what'd you hear?
God, God help us. We've got such corruption all around, Steve. All around. Yeah,
And that's a particularly egregious one because the evidence is so overwhelmingly against, and you can just sort of see the amateurness of it. And the process is the punishment, and so they're dragging him through the mud, dragging the family through the mud, and bankrupting him. And she's had this wonderful career. It shouldn't be this way, but. Until next time, this is your host, Steve Abramowitz. Peace in our time and G2G. Steve, do we have a takeout song? That NYPD Blue?
Yes.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz. Remember me? And this is the Heartland Journal podcast. Remember us? If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around, and subscribe again and pass around some more, and we can grow. That's how we do it. And thank you for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Martha Byrne. The Emmy Award-winning soap opera star and wife of an NYPD hero turned PI, Martha Byrne goes to war against the FBI and DOJ to save her family and clear her husband's name. The FBI knocked on the door one morning before dawn. It was a knock that forever changed the lives of those on the other side of it. The life of three-time Emmy Award-winning actress Martha Byrne was turned upside down on October 28, 2020, with a pre-dawn raid at her home by the FBI. They were there to arrest her husband, highly decorated NYPD hero turned private investigator Michael McMahon. In the fight to clear her husband's name, Martha uncovered a coordinated effort by the FBI, DOJ, and the Chinese Communist Party that led all the way up to the White House. Her new book, In the Interest of Justice, tells the story of the living nightmare for Martha and her family, thanks to 3 world government tactics that are right out of a communist dictator's playbook. Now she's here for the second time to update us on their war and her life as the world turns. Almost 2 turns since she's been here last. Hello, how are you today, movie star?
Oh, wow. Movie star. That's a very nice compliment. I'm here. That's always a good sign when you wake up and start your day in a beautiful sunny New Jersey morning. And so thank you for having me.
Oh, I thought you were in New York. I wore my New York stuff for you.
Close enough.
Close enough. Okay.
I consider myself a New York. I was raised in New York. I mean, when I was on Broadway in Annie in 1980, I feel like I really was on the streets and learned a lot about what New York is all about through just watching the world. So it really did. Someone said to me once, like, I'm so glad we got to be raised in New York City and like get the gritty and understanding of kind of what the craziness of life. And I agree with him 100%. I love New York.
It's a hard knock life. Isn't that what she said?
You better believe it.
Yeah, we learned that, didn't we? So has this drama and trauma made you want to leave the state? Well, New Jersey is close enough when Michael gets out.
I tell you, my husband was a police officer, an NYPD sergeant in the early 90s. So when we first got married, I mean, it was incredibly crazy and dangerous where he was working in the Bronx, and I got better. I watched New York City from the 80s turn into a safe, extremely safe city where I felt very comfortable wearing my jewelry, and I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder, and now I feel that it's kind of gone back to that, which gives me hope in a sense that if you have the right leadership, it can change in a minute. New York's always going to survive, right? New York is New York, but it's definitely changed. It's different, because when I was an Annie in 1980s, that it was very separate as far as like the crime, things that were going on. In Annie, we were Annie kids running all over the city together, and we would never had a problem. Like we never felt like anybody was going to be out to harm us or anything. And it feels much darker as far as
Yeah,
what's
you can't
going
even go
on.
into Times Square without getting beat up by Elmo and the Cookie Monster nowadays.
Well, Elmo alone, you should just stay away from that guy. That outfit is
He's got
a little
issues, yes.
sketchy, a little sketchy.
He's got some hate issues going on, maybe because they cut the funding. Well, has your faith in American justice been shattered through this?
I have to say that when my faith in the American justice system has never been it was extremely strong when I first got married to my husband, and I saw that how he was cleaning up the streets of New York and how it was all uh, somebody's here cutting the lawn, of course. How it was turned around, that you saw justice, you saw bad guys getting off the street, and how us as an American culture was all about getting the bad guys to be taken off the streets. And now, when I went through this with my husband in the federal system, it seemed to be completely different from what I had experienced my entire life with my husband and his other coworkers in the NYPD or even federal agents that we knew, like that, and how it had changed. And my husband, when he became a private investigator after he had a severe car accident on the job at the NYPD, he was working for U.S. attorneys. I'm sorry, not U.S. attorneys, but for defense attorneys, often doing federal cases with the U.S. attorneys' offices, et cetera. And even then, it seemed better, And I don't know what happened since that time, but there seemed to be far more nefarious behavior going on behind the scenes, and they were getting away with it. And I didn't, unless I saw it firsthand, I wouldn't believe how corrupt and how the win at all costs was far more important than justice.
Mhm.
And I saw evidence suppressed. I saw evidence manufactured in my husband's case. I saw what's called Brady material, which is exculpatory material kept from us for years. And then I wondered what else was there that they weren't showing us. We had encrypted discovery. We would get a batch of discovery for us to read after 8 months of waiting for it, and it was encrypted, so we couldn't open it. So we really haven't even seen a lot of our own discovery because we asked the government if they could help us, open it, and they said no. So here you are right now going, okay, now it's going to have to get an IT specialist to come in, and that was extremely expensive to do that. So we do what we could. And even with that, we saw things in our discovery that we thought, how could they have gotten search warrants? How could they have spied on us? And very disturbing. I mean,
Yeah, very
I'm
disturbing.
still,
I always call it the rise of the prosecuting attorney because it used to be equal. Defense and prosecutors would be congenial and they would share all this information. And then all of a sudden, the rise of the prosecutor, because guess what? Those are the ones that decided to run for office and become politicians post Rudy Giuliani. And now the scales are tipped. And so it's all about winning at all costs, like you just said, which is terrible. So Michael is a hero cop. It's
yes,
in the books. It's all we know about this from last episode you were on. The kind they make movies about, really.
yes.
Has his faith in the system been broken too? Not only the courts and the prosecutors, but the police department, his brothers in arms, the unions, anything.
You know, I think one of the biggest things that he has said to me is that he feels the justice system he's really lost complete faith in the justice system. And for
Sad,
him to
very
say
sad,
that is really, it hits in a different way
right?
because he's sacrificed everything, his life, his put his life on the line every day. He's a 9/11 first responder. He had 78 medals when he was on the NYPD, and he held himself to a certain standard that when he saw how these FBI agents behaved and the federal prosecutors behaved, now we understood why 99% of people got indicted and they won 99% of their cases. I mean, those are some odds,
Yeah, it's
and
really
God
like
forbid you fight
Superman
back.
saying, "I believe in truth, justice, just not that American way part." I mean, it really
Oh
is
yeah,
like that for him.
yeah, oh yeah. It's his heart is broken.
Oh,
His spirit is broken. He has faith in the people who have come forward to help him who didn't have to. So that gives you hope because you realize there are people out there who do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Like us, that's kind of how we were wired as human beings and how we kind of given back to society in many, many levels. So that's giving him hope. When he hears people like James Comer and their oversight committee did a 300-page report on the CCP, and they mentioned Mike's case as being one of weaponization, and it appears that he never should have been even arrested or prosecuted or investigated.
Right.
That gives you hope, right? Okay, that's a lot of congressmen. That's 45 of them are signed on to that document and seen it. So that gives you hope. And it's a million little miracles here and there. But he's sitting in a federal prison 600 miles away from our home, and he did nothing wrong.
Has your faith in God been shaken?
Stronger, actually. My faith in God is stronger.
Tell us.
Than it was. And I am Michael's as well. I think when I had a very strong faith before this happened, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school, but that was part of just my everyday. That was my normal. But until you go through something that all you have is to rely on your faith, it really tests your faith. So in the Catholic religion, it's about, these challenges are given to you as almost as gifts in a way that God feels that you're strong enough to handle this, and you have a responsibility to carry the cross for others, for yourself, to be a beacon of hope for others and get through it. And so you wake up every morning, and I do still, saying, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Basically, don't put me down the wrong path if it's not going to be fruitful for what you want me to do in this life. And Michael has found that as well. And, he was not as faithful as me as far as his Catholic faith. He was raised Catholic, but he had a lot of loss in his life, and he felt like his faith was challenged. And what I would do when this happened, I said, just come to church, just come to Mass, just sit in the pew for an hour, and he started coming with me every week. And then when I dropped him off at prison in 600 miles away in Michigan, I gave him rosary beads, and they were plastic rosary beads. And he said the guard wasn't going to let him keep them. And he said, I need those. He said, I need them. And I said to Mike, do you realize where those rosary beads came from? He goes, no. I said, those are the rosary beads that were given to me when our first son was born in the hospital. Mm. And he said there was something about them that I was very connected to. So he's been really, we don't have communication that much. We only get a few minutes, a day to talk to each other on the phone. He's not allowed to have emails because he's a stalker. His charge is a violent charge, which is, again, I don't know how you could be put in prison for stalking when the alleged victims never saw you and couldn't identify you in court, had no police reports, had no description of the vehicle, never saw you. I mean, if that doesn't shake people to their core, that you can have a man who's a private investigator who was on a public street, who was never seen, and told the police department every day of surveillance that he was there, and he had someone with him every day. If they can put you in federal prison for that, they can put anybody in.
Yeah, especially if you're a licensed PI. I mean, you might as well put them all in there. That's what they do.
Well, that's the point. That's why, he's not fighting just for himself. I mean, this is for I made a very good point yesterday. I said, well, it's not just private investigators. It's like ICE agents or any law enforcement who are doing their job. It only takes one person to say, I accuse somebody of stalking.
Well, literally, the U.S. Marshals were established to track down fugitives. How are you supposed to track them down out front and overtly? You have to. It's just ridiculous. It's just completely upside down. Okay, I want to talk more about that.
Yep.
But since we have the confines of this show to get it all in.
Yes.
I know it's been about 15 years since you last appeared on As the World Turns, but I wanted to ask this. I had Antonio Sabato Jr. on the show, episode 306. He was on a soap too, General Hospital, from 92 to 95. That was on ABC. You were on CBS. They didn't like his outspoken politics. So when they did a reunion show, they recast his character and killed him off. Not very nice. They did it without him. Do you think CBS, based in New York City, also, so is they, but would be just like that these days to you because of your controversy, even though now we know it's not fair? Or are their executives more friendly in this cancel culture world we live in?
Well, it's a hypothetical because obviously the
Sure.
show's been off since 2010. But I will tell you that Kimberlyn Brown, who was on Bold and the Beautiful, ran for Congress in California as a Republican on the Bold. She's on the Bold and the Beautiful. She's been on the show for how many years? 30 years or so.
Yeah.
And it was never been an issue at all. I mean, although CBS isn't technically her boss, the Bell family is, the Bell Philip Productions is, but that's never been an issue for them, for her. Would I feel the same way? It's hard to tell. I think that I would hope not, but unfortunately, it's a hypothetical. I mean, I don't know if anybody on CBS has had this issue. I mean, there's actors who are very outspoken on many things and have never been, punished for that, so to say, punished. But it's also the culture's changing now too, which is a good thing. I think that we're getting more back to what it should be, which is entertainment, sort of. But I don't know. I mean, I think I would hope that I'd been there for so long, and people. I was always like, I was a very outspoken. I mean, I came to work in a Catholic school uniform. I was an outspoken pro-life person. In my career before any political alignment I had in my life, which I really don't even have that right now. It's just that I happen to have found support within the Trump team and the Republican Party. I've had extremely overwhelming support from a lot of people in the party. So that's kind of where I went to listen to who was listening. I kind of see myself as a moderate person in general. So I don't think I think if you're maybe it's a corporate thing, maybe like Procter and Gamble, who owned our show. I just don't think Procter and Gamble would really think too much about it, to be honest with you, if it was still on today.
Yeah. Well, they used to support Ronald Reagan when he did it. But, Antonio, by the way, I don't know who that person is that you use as an example, but Antonio ran and lost for office in California too, but as a Republican. I don't know if she ran as a
She was a
Democrat.
Republican. Yeah,
She
she was a
also was.
Republican.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
yes, yes.
I guess there's the answers. They're meaner on the other network.
Or whatever. I
You
think
have
it's
any
owned by
thoughts of
different
running?
people. It
Yes.
depends on who your boss, it depends on who your boss is. If Bradley Bell, who owns The Bold and the Beautiful, their family owns that show and licensed it to CBS, technically they're her boss. So in our situation, Procter and Gamble was our boss. CBS licensed the show. So CBS wouldn't necessarily have a say in that
Yeah.
right now. Isn't that interesting? Like it really depends on who is your boss and who pays your check.
Very much so. And
And in
especially
ABC,
today versus back then. And As the World Turns ran for 54 years. So they must
yeah,
have made CBS billions in advertising.
yes.
But the network in the last 10 years, decided to go so biased on one side, especially the newsroom, on the political spectrum, they went all in against Trump and Republicans in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really I think we're going to look back at this time and go, how the heck did we get here? Where did it all begin? And I write in my book a lot about how the media never covered my husband's story properly. To this day,
Exactly.
not one story about his heroism, his career, that the guy he was following was a Wuhan official a CCP Wuhan official here in the country illegally.
I did get a lot of information from the New York Post, however. So Rupert Murdoch's organization that now wants to move into California, apparently they did follow you, but you're right.
Yes,
Certainly not on the news.
right. And it was Isabel Vincent wrote several stories in support of Michael's case, which was the only one, and unless it was me speaking out, which again, I was happy to do, but I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that you have a Wuhan official testifying in Mike's case and no one covered it. I mean, we just came out of we were still in it, really. We just came out of a pandemic about Wuhan and nobody covered that. Nobody covered his testimony. Nobody
Says a lot, right? Says
well, it was mind blowing. It was truly mind blowing about what he said. And I would look around thinking, why is this not? And we couldn't talk about it because, again, we're in the middle of a trial. My husband is, fighting for his life. So what is he going to do? Right? Is he going to say, we can't speak about that until it's over, technically, because you didn't want to. Because we weren't winning anything. We weren't getting any rulings. We weren't getting anything to help our case. So why would that, we didn't want to push it anymore either.
Yeah, makes sense. So you were last here. I looked it up on Rumble Library on our channel, episode 162, December 20th, 2023, right before Christmas, almost 2 years ago. At the time, your husband was being harassed by the FBI, almost 10-year nightmare resulting in him becoming the first private investigator convicted of spying for the People's Republic of China in the United States. We know that's BS. They apparently don't. How is he holding up?
Well, now that he's right outside the window.
Oh, he is?
No, the landscaper. I don't know if
Oh,
you're hearing that. They're cutting the grass today,
no, I
especially at
can't
this
hear it,
time.
but it happens a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like it's so interesting about the hearing the landscaper. Like life goes on, right? Someone's coming to trim the grass, and your life kind of goes on, but it's not. It's on hold. Um, he's in a place he shouldn't be in. He is in a facility that's a low security facility. He should not be there. He is a 0 to 2 threat level, which is like nothing, basically. He should be close to home. He's not. He shouldn't be there at all. Um,
Something
so
about
he's
500 miles, right? I heard something
yeah.
about he's just outside the limit of where it could be.
Well, here's what happened is that someone wrote in their report that this facility was 498 miles from our home. So it was under the 500, but it's not. It's over 600 miles away. So someone wrote that in their report, which is false. And he also should not be at a low security prison with, you know, the kind of perpetrators that are in there, which he's a police officer, retired obviously, but police officers in prisons don't necessarily do very well, as you know.
Yeah, especially if you put someone in there. What
And
what what,
also if
what
you
benefit
yeah.
would he have gotten if that person hadn't lied and said it was,
Oh, he would be 40 minutes from my house in what they call like a camp, which is, no bars, no nothing like that. You're it's more like an army barracks type of situation.
oh, so
But
it's
he'd
a
be
complete different environment.
completely different.
And
It's
how did they
very
get away with that? It's not hard to tell a judge or somebody, hey, that number's off. Here's my odometer.
Well, here's what happens is that you have to file a complaint, then that complaint has to go through all the channels, has to be approved by all these other people. It's all the red tape that goes into that. By the time you rectify that situation, he's home. That's how long these things take.
Oh, because he got an 18-month sentence, he'll probably come home early. By the time that process of red tape was cut, it would be over and it would be moot.
Yeah, and this is more of a BOP problem, and they have a new head of the Bureau of Prisons now who said he's going to be addressing the First Step Act, which is what Donald Trump wants to, really implement, which is if you can get home confinement, if you qualify, you should be in home confinement. I mean, my husband has never had a parking ticket in his life. He has nothing on his NYPD record, completely incredible. He's a hero. He absolutely qualified to get probation based on his 9/11 issues, his health issues. They punished him, and that's part of our future discussions. Right now, I just want to get him home.
Right, sure.
Right. It's. I feel that he's not getting the health care that he needs. Again, as a 9/11 first responder, we have we had a.
Was it a state crime or a federal crime?
It was a federal crime.
So why
Federal.
doesn't Trump pardon him like he did the Jan Sixers?
I think that there's a lot of things that go through that. You don't. It's not television. It's not like television where you'd say, okay, someone swoops in and takes care of it. I mean, there's a process to it, and there are people that have to sign off and read through the case. And remember, it's not just Mike in this case. There's other people. There's people who took plea deals who Mike had nothing to do with any of these people, nothing.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more complicated. I do think
But
that,
Trump's a New Yorker. This is local news for him. He should have.
well, he's also a back the blue guy. He's also a 9/11 supporter, first responder. I know that I really believe when he hears the details of this case, whenever he is prepped or briefed on it, he's going to be horrified. And I also feel like every day that goes by that he doesn't know about it, or if he does, I think that it has to be brought to his attention. And Congressman Michael Lawler, who's amazing, I mean, has been an absolute advocate and wrote a letter to President Trump regarding Mike and his support of Mike. So I know that he's getting a lot of positive support, but this is politics, and it has to be the right time for everyone and he's the president of the United States,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, everybody that listens to this show, please go to the
thank
whitehouse.gov
you.
website and send an email today and say,
Thank
this
you.
is
Thank
outrageous.
you. It
So
is.
you wrote this book, In the
Yes.
Interest of Justice, One Woman's Fight Against Weaponized Justice Department to Save Her Husband.
Yes.
How did the Justice Department, that would be Biden and Trump one and two now Justice Departments, by the way, how did they weaponize against him?
Well, if you go back to 2016, which we're learning about a lot about now, about what was going on with the FBI, what they did to Donald Trump as soon as he came down the escalator. They were spying on him illegally. Carter Page, Michael Flynn, Kash Patel, Devin Nunes. If you put yourself in that frame of mind as far as what was going on, completely behind the scenes with the three-letter agencies, then it makes sense as to where Mike fell into that, into the first administration, when you have an FBI agent who decides to keep this case to themselves, and the Eastern District of New York, which is Brooklyn, who were doing this on their own back in 16 to 20. That puts it in perspective as far as like happening under Trump. People always say like, well, it happened under his investigation against him happened under Trump. I said, well, look what they were doing to Donald Trump during that first term. Okay. So that they were absolutely off the rails in that time. And we have a Obama appointed judge. All the prosecutors were appointed by either Biden or under Obama. You have a system that has kind of, again, gone to a much more political, underground, darker place where it's veiled. A lot of it is completely veiled. And I've learned that now since the last couple of months, since Trump got into office. I've spoken to several people who said I should have been involved in this case, and I was not. I was walled off from your husband's case. And that was shocking to me, that I knew it. Like, I felt like, how could all the FBI and this and that not know what's going on here? And they didn't, because they weren't told. So you have a small amount of people who have one agenda, and it's not the American people's agenda. It's a political agenda. Whether it's China, I pointed this out in my book, and I detail it in my book. If you read the book, I let people decide what the reason was. But leading up to the 2020 election, we're finding this out now too. Why are they arresting my husband a week before the 2020 election when it's about China, when all the actual players in this case had fled the country on the FBI's watch? There was, what did they get? They got a NYPD guy who had retired and did a couple days of work in 2016. Why would they have that? Why would they make this big press conference with Christopher Wray and John Demers and a lot of other players that you're going to start to hear more about in 2020, about the 2020 election?
They obviously had their eyes on it, and they didn't want anyone else to know what was going on. Something we'll get to that in a second. So the mother of three has transformed herself into an investigator, advocate, personal trainer, and even amateur psychiatrist for her husband's cause. I must say, you look great since the last time we saw you. Have you been working out? Are you a trainer now?
No, I'm training. I think they're referring to training my husband.
Yeah, I know. It's from your book. Yeah.
I am. I'm doing okay. I don't. I'm worried about my husband 24/7. So I'm trying to find ways to stay strong. I am going to be running the Tunnel to Towers, which I've done the last few years.
Oh, good.
In September, my brother-in-law, who passed away the day before Mike was sentenced, he was a lieutenant in the fire FDNY and Army Ranger, died of 9/11 illness. And my husband has 9/11 issues. So I'm going to be running that with our family, all of us. I hope Mike is with me. I'm praying that he's out in time to come be part of that.
And that's a good thing, because it takes, these Herculean tasks usually people don't take care of themselves. They break down or get sick, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So good for you for looking after yourself, because you're no good to him if you're worn out and you can't do it.
Yeah. Well, I said to him, I was talking to him on the phone. I said, when we're together, when you were here, I could motivate you to get up and go with me, whether to the gym or go for a walk or go for a run. But now that he's not here, it's not as easy for me to find the strength to do it.
Right.
And
You
I
were
also have
training
to know my
him to get ready. Now you're training yourself to stay the course. I got it. Yeah.
exactly.
But again, it's a marathon, so don't hurt yourself.
Yes, exactly.
McMahon denies he knowingly worked for the Chinese government and has long maintained he is a scapegoat used by the Department of Justice to score political points by making an example of him. So was he caught up in a war on private investigators in New York City by dirty politicians trying to destroy the fact finders to hide their crimes, like the entire industry of PI, or just him?
I think he was a perfect scapegoat for what they were trying to do, which was if this is an optics case about China, because Donald Trump was always saying we're not hard enough on China, we're not doing enough on China, we're not doing enough on China. Joe Biden had his China issues, obviously with his son, and his relationships with Chinese business, millions of dollars. And the day Mike was arrested, two letters went out from the FBIAA, which is the FBI Association. I think they're active and retired agents. And two letters went out, one to Joe Biden's team and one to Trump's team to encourage both of them to keep Christopher Wray as the head of the FBI, depending on who gets in the next, who wins 2020.
Right.
And China was a big issue. Now, if you have an optics case where it said, look what we're doing. Look, we've arrested not even just Chinese people living here in the United States, but an American, a cop, it gets attention. And with Joe Biden,
I
what it
remember
does is,
leading up to the election, there was all that, I think, 4 spies that were listening in somewhere in New Manhattan that ended up getting kicked. Was that the whole bad optics of China, or was that specifically the case he was on?
no, I mean there was so many issues with China in the United States, and the Chinese police stations in New York, and academia and real estate, for all these things were going on in the United States that were not being addressed
Yeah.
by the proper people. I mean, I know more about Chinese crimes in this country than I ever needed to know. But I think he checked a lot of boxes because there were a lot of Chinese cases, one in particular with an NYPD active lieutenant that should have been really had all the boxes about a fox hunt case, and he was not arrested. But my husband, who's retired since 2003, he checks the NYPD box, the PI box to send a message to PIs that what we're
It's like the
doing.
French Connection, and he's
Yeah,
Popeye.
yeah,
Was it
it's bad.
just China dealings they were afraid of, or more like Elliot Spitzer type sex scandals and all the other stuff politicians usually get busted for in New York, like trying to, burn bag everything, and China was an excuse for his part.
I think China was the issue
China
because
was the issue.
I think so because you
Operation
have
Fox Hunt.
the yeah, well, because we have Hunter's laptop, which is riddled with Chinese issues. They were trying to cover up. 51 intelligence, allegedly intelligence officers signed off on it, saying it was Russian disinformation, which it wasn't. You had, there was a multi-scope plan that was put in place as soon as that laptop surfaced, and people thought I was crazy when it first happened. I'm telling you, within a week that Mike was arrested, I said he was arrested because of Hunter Biden's laptop, and people thought I was crazy.
Change the
But
subject. Change the subject.
yeah, exactly. But it wasn't just you had the intel. You had the 51 guys saying it was, and women that were saying it was Russian. But didn't you just hear what happened? That in Albany they found tens of thousands of ballots that had been obtained with Joe Biden being
Yeah,
checked off. That was
yeah.
Chinese.
And the
Okay.
U.S. Postal Service admitted that the guy with the whole truckload of them was telling the truth, that he actually was carrying them into Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge story and we could talk about it all, but I
Yeah.
want kind of Chinese police stations in Lower Manhattan where officials allegedly often worked with local private investigators to nab Chinese nationals, usually on charges from the motherland. Not hard to believe they decided along the way to protect those same Chinese nationals instead of charge them. So what's
Hmm.
up with Chinese police stations anyway? Why do they have their own police stations in our country?
It's because the politicians, China invests a lot of money in our politicians, a lot of donations. I mean, we found out not just too long ago that even the subject my husband was following, the Wuhan official, had donated to Hillary Clinton in the fall of 2016, a wanted Chinese fugitive. He was involved in massive EB5 frauds, which is this EB5, which is like a way that people get fast tracked to get visas in the United States. In China is 84%. So what I'm saying is that the political element of this definitely was a factor. And they would say they are like help centers for people from China who are here to help them with their visa, but that wasn't true.
That's what an
So
embassy is supposed to do.
you're right, right. And if you have uh, how do you fix that, right? How do you fix that? And I've always said, like, why, if they had come to my husband and the other NYPD retired PIs that were with him in 2016, what would we have found out? Well, we would have found out that there was a massive amount of money laundering through real estate that was going on that Mike found just by his case. This very simple case showed a pattern of Chinese officials owning real estate in this country.
Bingo.
So, it's a huge problem. But when people are getting rich, politicians, they don't want it to be exposed because it's a machine that's been working
And
for
let's
very
not forget, that's almost a decade ago, and nobody's been stopping it because Mike's been all wrapped up in this. So there you have it. It went on. They got him out of the way. Retired FBI agent Kevin Hecht, one of the foremost experts on China counterintelligence, who began investigating Operation Fox Hunt in 2016, same time, called it an example of malicious prosecution on the part of the DOJ. Sounds just like January 6th. So somewhere along the way, it went from a New York case to a federal DC swamp cover-up. Any idea what or who went to DC that wanted that done?
Well, one of the biggest questions I get from people who work in the government, that are good people, like, how did Mike get charged with interstate stalking when he did a case in New Jersey? He never left New Jersey. The subjects live in New Jersey. How does he get charged with interstate stalking?
It's like that
Why?
movie Copland. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now but it goes to the Eastern District of New York prosecutor's office. Why is that? Why didn't it go to the New Jersey prosecutor's office? Okay. So you realize that there's representatives from DC who work in these offices, and you have someone like, his name is Scott Claffey, who worked in Chinese, or intelligence, you kind of in his space, okay, in the EDNY, but he's really a direct link to DC and that side of it, okay. They did not include the New York FBI people in this case, the Fox Hunt people. Why would they do that? Why would they not include, let's say you said a Kevin Hecht, for instance, let's use him as an example. Why wouldn't they include someone like him in this investigation? Why do they bypass him? Again, this is a multi-layered kind of issue. And Scott Claffey, who was with the Department of Justice for 11 years, just left right after Mike was sentenced. Like 2 days later, he was gone.
Job done.
Well, or maybe it appears he may have been let go. The lead prosecutor, Craig Herein, left in September of 2024, right before the election was coming on. So a lot of people left, and there was a lot of dirty business that was going on that all came out at our trial, but nobody reported on it. So, when you have people doing, like I said, under a veil, and not including good agents who have integrity,
or journalists with integrity, because if a tree falls in the woods, nobody hears it. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, here's one for you. Bo Dietl. He worked with a Chinese security firm and conducted surveillance on a Chinese billionaire couple, Zhu and Liu, a former Wuhan official, you alluded to this, who had fled China amid allegations of corruption. Wuhan, as in COVID, gain of function research. Any idea if this has to do with Fauci and Collins and their cover-up of COVID, wrapping Mike into it?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm no brain surgeon, and I don't stand to be here and say but I can see the obvious things, which is you have a former Wuhan official from CCP, high-ranking guy who was in charge of the buildings, in charge of, that's what he did. Like, if you look him up, if anybody actually did any research, they would have found that out. And he fled here not as a dissident, but being charged with, embezzlement and taking bribes. This is not a dissident, okay? So what else was going on? What else was happening? And as far as what Bo Dietl did, his surveillance on certain people, whether it was a crime or not, if that's not a crime, then neither Mike never being seen or never, why is that a crime and not the other? See my point?
Right.
Like
They were both using the same investigative tactics. Michael's in jail. Bo is hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, which is why I don't understand why he doesn't, or RFK Jr. don't tell Trump to pardon Mike and just bring him home tomorrow.
I would really hope that I've learned a lot in the last 4.5 years. People protect themselves first a lot of the time. And going out on a limb for somebody is heroic, first of all, but if it's super heroic if you've been involved in something similar and you don't want to draw attention to it. And, it would be the right thing to do, in my opinion, about, I was in Bo Dietl's office right after Mike's arrest. I spoke to him and he didn't seem to want to help. That's on him. That's his decision.
Yeah.
It's just very disappointing that happened, because surveillance is surveillance. That meaning the PI industry is the PI industry. So I'm not sure what the other cases were. There were many, many cases, and for instance, in the Southern District of New York, there was a case where there were multiple PIs who were knocking on people's doors, for Chinese, to go after these Chinese people that had apparently fled here, and the CCP wanted to pressure them to go back. And they were not arrested. They were warned. They were told by the New York field office that you had been targeted, and they went, oh my gosh, we had no idea. And they went on their merry way, and they were never charged. And Mike did nothing. He did nothing, and he's sitting in prison. So there's a total imbalance of what's gone on here. But by the way, let's say the judge who said this several times, well, you can deal with that on appeal. You'll deal with that on appeal. Why should it cost my family our savings, our safety, the people's opinions? The world thinks you're a spy. He's in jail, prison. Why should we have to wait until his appeal to rectify the situation and exonerate him?
That, and you and your family have practically exhausted your savings on legal fees. Is anyone in the new Trump administration, even below Don himself, looking at this? Pam Bondi,
yes.
Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, maybe they get him out early and not the full 18 months.
We're working on that. It's a constant battle every single day. I wake up. You've
been there 7 months now.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be. I'm learning again. There. Should he be a priority? I believe so, but he's my husband. He's the father of my children. He's a hero. He's a representative of all the good that is in this country. And
they just moved a monster, Ghislaine Maxwell, from high security, whatever, to somewhere in Texas.
I know. I know.
Overnight, boom, like that.
Overnight. It can be done that fast if someone wants to do it.
Yeah, we got to find that person for you.
We do. We really do. I think the new head of the BOP, again, he just came out saying in the end of May, he said, I really want to implement Trump's First Step Act, which is, again,
I was told they're working on a second step. So it'd be nice if the first one would work on you and then the second one for other people. But yeah.
And we would help with that. I mean, I think there's a lot of growth that needs to happen, but you're putting my husband in a situation where he should not be.
Police aren't supposed to be in general population. That's just not the way it's supposed to work. I've seen enough movies to know that. I always like to quote good reviews to authors, not the bad ones, and there are none for you, but and get their reaction. You're an author now, so Teresa said 5 stars. So congratulations first off for that.
Yeah.
Writing a book is hard, so 5 stars is huge, folks. Important and timely must read. What would you do if the person at the very center of your life, the one you know better and trust more than anyone, became the target of an FBI investigation, complete with a horrifying pre-dawn arrest for simply doing his job? Thus begins Marsha Martha Byrne's jaw-dropping true story. As she works to clear her husband Michael's name, Martha unravels unimaginable corruption to get to the root of the nightmare in which they're living. Interwoven throughout is a story of abiding love, deep faith, and the perseverance of the human spirit. What would you say to Teresa if you could about your book?
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, you put yourself, you're as raw as you can possibly be on the page, and you're always wondering if it's going to translate to the reader. Because I'm just telling you the truth, and I'm just telling you what we went through, and for someone to take that away and get it, to feel it it's different than acting. You act in a scene and the audience responds, but you're playing a different person.
Yeah.
But it's still real. You're still feeling all the feelings, but you're playing a role. But when you're writing about your own life and you're not holding anything back, it's not scary for me because I just felt it was an important story to tell. It makes you feel like I did the right thing. It was the right thing to do to get the story out there for people to understand what can happen in this world. And hopefully have some faith.
All the world's a stage. We just hope it has a happy ending, right?
Yes.
So one more 5-star. Allison G. Required reading for every American. What moved me even more profoundly was the McMahon family's steadfast Catholic faith, their relationship with the Blessed Mother, and their unwavering trust in God mirrors my own. Every day I pray the rosary, and every day I offer one of my intentions specifically for Michael McMahon, that he receives a presidential pardon before his scheduled surrender to the Bureau of Prisons. I also pray for the peace, safety, and strength of his family. The McMahons, like so many others, have been crushed by a government that seems determined to destroy them, not serve them. Martha's words, rooted in both justice and faith, are a testament to why we must keep fighting evil in all its forms. That is not your typical book review. What do you say to Allison?
Wow, Allison. I mean, that was... The faith part of it is so important. The rosary is your best weapon against the devil. I mean, that's kind of what the devil doesn't like the Blessed Mother because she is a woman, powerful, and the mother of God in our religion. She is all powerful and protection. And if you ask for her protection, she will provide that. And all you have to do is ask for her protection, and she will provide that. So the rosary becomes a big part of that, enhancing that strength and protection. So for Allison to recognize that, and I had a visitation from the Blessed Mother right before Mike was arrested, and I go into detail in the book about what happened and how powerful it was, and how it changed me forever. So for that part of it to come out, and I always felt like people should read the book if they've lost faith, if they felt like their faith has been, damaged, or they feel that it needs some sort of re-energizing or seeking something in their life. I feel like this book could also do that for them too. I hope it's helped some people continue to fight their own battles, whatever they are.
That's great, because you're not selfish and you want this to never happen to anybody again. I've known a few Marthas in my life. Martha Washington, of course, from school, the first lady of our country, George's wife, for you liberals listening. Martha Pascan, my Sunday school teacher back home. Martha Atkinson, pretty much my first crush. Martha Stewart, no bueno. And you, now for the second time on this show. And sisters Martha and Mary and Bethany were close friends of Jesus. So let me ask you. In the story, Martha was the worrier that was too preoccupied with worldly tasks, setting up and being the hostess, and upset with her sister Mary that spent every second she could with Jesus. Same Mary that poured out the expensive perfume on his feet, Judas was upset with. Do you feel more like Martha these days, sweating the small stuff, or Mary sitting at Jesus's feet, seeking intimacy with God?
I'm telling you, I do not sweat. I have not sweat the small stuff in a very, 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 very long time. Long before this happened to us, I had a very good grasp on what was important in my life. And I'm grateful for that, first of all. I do feel that serving God is the most important part of my life. But in serving, it's the tasks you've been given, which are challenges. I feel... I think the worrier. I was always the thing about Martha, and I'm named after my grandmother. Martha was always the one entertaining everybody, in the Bible. She was the one who was always like the cooking, and that was totally me. And I'm always still that person, but I don't stress about it. It's more of a celebration. So it's interesting about you talk about Martha and the feet. How important that washing of the feet, and you've seen popes have done that, in the poor, and I've said to Mike, a couple of times he has a major foot problem, and how the pain that he's felt from some of his ailments from on the job. He was hurt severely on the NYPD. He has a lot of ailments, he has a lot of pain, physical pain in his life. So I pray for that too, so that could be lifted, because so many people suffer because of that. Like their physical issues cause depression. They lose their faith. How could this happen to me? And I think Mary's the simplistic thing of just washing, and the simplicity of the love and the touch of the human, connection. We've lost so much of that in this world right now. And so with my kids, just giving them a hug or giving them, something as simple as when they were little, combing their hair, putting braids in my daughter's hair, I would appreciate every second of it, because I knew that was what it was really about. And I may not be able to do that my entire life. I have friends that are not well, and have suffered. And they can't do those things anymore. So I remember that, being very young, kind of, even in my marriage, appreciating what a great human being chose me to be his wife. And he's still that man, 32 years later.
Yeah.
So,
well, we're praying for him to get out of there.
Thank you.
What's next for you? Any family events coming up, or another book?
I think my husband should write the next book. I think he has experienced something that thankfully very few people ever have to. And he's writing like crazy. He's writing everything down to remember kind of what he's been going through. It helps him. It's very therapeutic for him. And I told him what happened since he's left and the people that I've met. I could write another book. It's fascinating what has happened since he left, and who has come into my life that are angels. I mean, true angels seem to be out of nowhere. I could write another book about what's going on right now, but I'm kind of saving it for him to come home and talk about it with him one-on-one, so he can understand how many people have come forward to help him, and let him tell his story. Because I've been talking a lot for the last 4.5 years, and he couldn't talk.
Yeah, I hope when it comes out, you both come on here and tell us.
I said, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it.
Well, dear sweet Martha, thank you for sharing your and Michael's story with us again.
Thank you.
I wish it was happier circumstances, but maybe happily ever after will be the next one. We are at the end here, so tell everyone where they can go find out more about you and your social media.
Thank you.
And buy your book.
Buy the book. In the
buy
interest
2, 3.
of justice.
Christmas is coming.
It's coming. I have yes, you can get the book on all the platforms where you can buy books, purchase books, Amazon and everywhere else. And
did you have a problem finding a publisher, by the way? Did anyone try to shut you down?
No, the publisher was introduced through someone else, and they said, we have to tell your story. I mean, I wasn't even looking for a book deal at all. I wasn't looking for a publisher. They came to me through a friend, so that was amazing, because I never would have done it. I'm too busy. But then when they say, oh, we need it by the end of the month, you think, okay, I better start typing. So I did not, Post Hill Press, who's publisher. I mean, if you look at the books, they're doing Michael Flynn's book. They're doing so many other, giving a platform for people who can to speak, which is wonderful. So they were wonderful. I mean, I can't say enough about working with them, how great they've been. And Martha Byrne 10 on Twitter, X, and Martha Byrne Official on Instagram. And I do a lot of things on Facebook too, Martha Byrne. And you can find me on my professional page. I do a lot of talkbacks and questions. I give away books all the time to kind of thank people for the support. And we feel the love from everybody. So I'm incredibly grateful.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on with us. Hang on, everybody. I will be right back.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Thank you, Porter Martin, and howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. Please hit that subscribe button and pass it around. Thanks for doing it. The book is out, Songs About the Heartland, by me, Steve Abramowitz. Check it out at Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. But you're not here for that. This is the Heartland Journal podcast, the show whose voices inspired the book. On this show, we focus on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community and lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guests, Mike McMahon and Martha Byrne, whose voice is prominent in the book. If you haven't heard the 2 episodes, beginning and middle of her story, go back and check them out. You'll need a box of tissues for Michael's story. Episode 162, December 20th, 2023, and 374 last summer. A 2-year saga in the making with a made-for-TV happy ending. Both here now with me. Martha Byrne and her husband, Michael McMahon, have been married for over 3 decades. She is a noted actress, widely known for her works in As the World Turns, Anna to the Infinite Power, General Hospital, and Anacostia. Martha told the New York Times, "Michael got all of my jokes. I'd tell a joke and he'd laugh until he had tears in his eyes. He really honestly thought it was funny, and it was great. Performers need that." Michael is a former NYPD cop, earning 75 commendations, including the Police Combat Cross, turned private investigator. He was convicted of spying for the People's Republic of China in 2023. However, he remained firm that he wasn't aware of his involvement with the Chinese government. In early 2025, McMahon was ultimately sentenced to 18 months in prison. On November 7th, 2025, President Donald Trump approved a pardon for Michael from prison. The White House praised the former New York Police Department sergeant for his law enforcement service, touting his commendations and service in the aftermath of September 11th, 2021, and cast Trump's decision to pardon him as one of fairness because of what it said were issues with his trial. As a private investigator, Mr. McMahon was indicted for his work investigating an individual he was told had embezzled funds from a construction company. In reality, the people who had hired him were actually Chinese spies, the White House said. CNN reported the guilty verdicts were the first trial victory in the Justice Department's efforts to combat Operation Fox Hunt, the Chinese Communist Party's international alleged anti-corruption campaign targeting those the Chinese government considered fugitives, often former officials of rich individuals suspected of economic crimes. Byrne and McMahon, now reunited, live in New York City, are parents to 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, Michael Terrence, Maxwell Vincent, and Anna Marie. Hello, happiest New Year's ever. How are you two today?
Oh, hello. That was quite an introduction. We're still on the pardon, I don't know, victory tour if you want
The
to.
pardon high, the pardon
Yeah.
exuberance.
Honeymoon high, yeah, whatever. We'll take it.
We'll take it.
We'll
It's
take it.
very surreal. I can't even uh tell you how amazing this has been, and it's kind of hitting us now. What a enormity of a decision that the president of the United States did for us and didn't have to do it and did the right thing. And we got to his desk, we got to the eyes of the president, and he recognized how horrific this was and got him out of prison. And it was unbelievable. It is still unbelievable. We're in DC right now, but
It is.
it's
It
been
is. It's
incredible.
like training for a marathon, running a marathon, and 5 minutes after it's over, you're like, oh, wow, all of that work. And here we are at the finish line. So, Michael, I normally would start ladies first, but since I had 2 hours with Martha already, we were praying for you throughout. So happy to
Thank
have you here to celebrate the happy ending with you two on the same screen. Tell us from your perspective, what did you fall into that the whole world didn't want you free to talk about or uncover?
Sure. Back in 2016, early 17, I worked a basic private investigation case. I was hired to locate an individual who stole money from a Chinese construction company. He was living in New Jersey. They wanted to find the assets that he stole, and they wanted us to do a couple of days of surveillance in New Jersey. I hired 2 NYPD detectives, retired, to work with me. We did surveillance, did some background checks, and that was basically the extent of my case. 5 days of work, surveillance, some background checks, and that's pretty much it. 4 years later, I get a knock on my door at 6 o'clock in the morning. My house was surrounded by federal agents, the local police, and I was arrested for the Foreign Registration Act and interstate stalking. Something I was shocked. Didn't know what this was all about. Thought it was a joke. Didn't really understand it. They gave me the complaint. I read the complaint. It was all full of lies. And I said to the agent, "You sure this is me in the complaint? Because this is not me. What they were alleging I did was not what I did. I did basic surveillance, legal surveillance on public streets. Um, notify the local police each and every day I was out there doing surveillance. And that's what you do. You notify the local police if you're in their jurisdiction. That's more of a safety factor. You don't want them rolling up on you or neighbors calling a suspicious vehicle, and then you have three, four cop cars surrounding you at that location. You burn the set, so to speak. It's more of a safety issue. So I notified the local police, and I did everything by the book. And then, 4 years later, they arrested me, and I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it.
Did the higher ups at the agencies, the police department, whatever agencies are looking out for law enforcement versus, is there any way to think that like something changed between you doing your normal course of business as a PI to that day in those 4 years to say like, there it's actually a political vendetta, not a regular, a crime committed?
Yeah, so we found out later on after my arrest that the guy I was surveilling was a CCP Wuhan official. He was a high-ranking CCP member from Wuhan. He fled China to New Jersey with millions of dollars, set up multiple homes in the United States, California, New Jersey, and he was laundering all this money here in the US. They protected him for some reason, I believe because he was from Wuhan and because he was a CCP official. Maybe he was a double agent. Maybe he was working with the CIA. Maybe he was working with the FBI as a confidential informant with the Wuhan lab medical information stuff. We don't
Yeah.
know. We assume
So
that's
you really
why.
did stumble into something
Yeah.
multinational without
Yeah,
Yeah.
knowing
who
it.
knew? I mean, really, who knew? And the thing is that the FBI had an investigation on him in 2017 and proved that he had committed immigration fraud through the EB5 immigration program, obtained illegal green card. He was under investigation by the FBI in 2017. Ironically, the same week that Mike was following him, something came out in California from the FBI, but they never arrested him for that. That went away. So there's something darker here, deeper here, but he didn't do anything wrong. And
Yeah.
and when we went to trial, the subjects, the Chinese subjects that were involved, allegedly the victims, couldn't identify him in court, said they didn't know who he was, so how could he be stalking them? They had no police reports, they had no pictures or anything like that. And so there's something very much darker going on. And then
Mhm.
when he was found guilty, ultimately, the alleged victims never asked for any jail time for him and no restitution, no money. So they disappeared and a civil lawsuit against them that had been filed in New Jersey was surprisingly thrown out after the trial. So there's something much darker going on here, but he didn't. I mean, he had
No, just
nothing.
a cog, just a piece of the
Yeah,
machinery
my
that
role
was in the
was such
way.
a small part of it. There was a whole big fox hunt operation, is what they call fox hunt operations. When they send agents here looking for people that are wanted in China, they send their own agents here and they scour the country and they find them and they sort of force them back. Um, but I was used in this case to do surveillance and background checks. I didn't know what their goal was. I didn't know what their end game was. They never told me, and they would never tell a former law enforcement about their goals and their operations. They keep everything to themselves, which is what they did in my case.
Wow.
But the government turned it and said, "Oh, they told you. They must have told you, and you knew this whole operation," and creating this whole fake story and these lies. And I can't believe the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office got away with it.
Right.
Yeah, I want to get into that a little bit. But did the inmates and guards treat you like the hero you are, or were they cruel to you? Usually,
Ah,
not good for cops to be in general population with folks that you may have put there.
yeah, so I was sentenced to 18 months in Milan, Michigan. It's a low security prison. I heard low security. I'm like, okay, that's doable. But when you get there, it's more like a medium max security prison. I was in general population, former law enforcement. It's not safe. It's not healthy to be there. My first day, I was sort of harassed a little bit. I looked like a cop. Day two, I was surrounded after there was a shakedown and they found numerous weapons in the facility in my area, drugs, cigarettes, marijuana, cocaine, knives, cell phones. So on day two, they surrounded me thinking I was a rat, thinking I was the one who let everybody know, all the guards know that there was all this contraband in the prison. I had nothing to do with it. I just got there, 2 days before.
Was this
I was trying
Pennsylvania?
in Michigan,
Michigan.
yeah, Milan, Michigan.
Yeah, they sent him
Violent.
600 miles away from us, which was, I couldn't see him. I wasn't allowed to visit him. Have no communication with him because he was supposedly a stalker. So I didn't see him for over 3 months. I could barely speak to him. Um, it was really scary, and it was deliberate that they sent him that far away from us. And the punishment just continued after even it never ended. It was a constant beatdown for the last 5 years, and we never won anything. We never got one ruling in our favor in 5 years. Nothing, not one thing, not evidence, not motions, not. He was supposed to be near us. He was supposed to be near home in a camp, like when they called Fed Camp Fed. He was supposed to be near our home, and 3 days before he was supposed to go there, we found out by accident, and they're sending him to Michigan, 600 miles away. So it's been horrible. I mean,
How
it's
did
like
you get the story to Trump to get the pardon?
ooh, that was a
I
long.
think she was amazing. She was my advocate, and she spoke for me when I couldn't speak. And she reached out to everybody. Not everybody called her back, and not everybody responded. But Mike Lawler, Congressman Mike Lawler from New York, was absolutely amazing, and my hero in this whole case. He took care of us. He
For
answered
years.
phone calls, wrote letters to the warden, just to say this is an awful travesty. You got to release him from federal custody, put him in a halfway house, put him where it's safe. So that's what he did. He wrote letters for me, along with Congressman Pete Sessions and Ralph Norman from South Carolina. So I had several congressmen write letters, and that is what helped me get out of the low security prison after 3.5 months
Hmm.
to a halfway house in Newark.
Yeah, I have a quote here from Mike Lawler, Republican from New York. He said, "I will continue to support efforts to fight this miscarriage of justice," which is awesome. No Democratic friends came out for you?
No, quite the opposite. We're from New Jersey, and when Mike Lawler first got involved with this case, he hadn't even become a congressman yet. He was still running, but he said, if I win, I'm going to help you, but I really recommend you reach out to your representatives first, just to, as pro, it's really the right thing to do. I'm like, I knew they weren't going to help me, but I did it. And Cory Booker happened to be in the same building as our attorney, so I stopped by his office twice, wrote emails, never heard from him. Josh Gottheimer is my local representative. Nothing, never heard from him. And okay, you don't want to help us, whatever. But the point is if you have Chinese operations going on in New Jersey with CCP agents running around attempting to harass people allegedly, wouldn't you want to speak to a person who has dealt with this directly and learn more about what's going on in your own state? No. So, but I will say this is that in 2024, the GOP Oversight Committee, James Comer's Oversight Committee, which has 20 Democrats and 25 Republicans, they did a whole investigation on the CCP and every agency's response to the CCP, an in-depth years investigation. And the DOJ got a failing grade, a red failing grade because of Mike's case. And they put an incredible brief inside that report into October of 2024. So technically, Democrats and Republicans are part of that report. So even though they might not have read it but they're aware of it and they agreed on at least they had to be involved in some way. So I'll take that as a bipartisan recognition that this case was outrageous. And I'm so grateful to James Comer. Got to meet him here in DC a couple of times, thank him personally for what he did for us. And it did help. It really did help bring awareness to this case on a much higher level.
So you lived your life on TV, you know about happy endings and drama and all the rest. Hollywood is a very liberal town, as we all know. Were you a Democrat back in the day, and did Hollywood or any in the entertainment business rally to your side that you'd like to shout out to? And if not, would you ever vote Republican or Democrat again?
I'm like an independent. Like I voted for whatever is good policy for my family. And I'm always a conservative in a sense that I'm pro-life. I always have been. I'm an unapologetically pro-life person. Like I'm Catholic. I mean, I vote not party, but my family policy. That's kind of how I stand. Yeah, there have been people have stood by my side. My Laura Lee Bell, who is one of my dearest friends, who's on The Young and the Restless, she's been a friend for decades, always was my friend. It never changed, but it was never political anyway. She's not a political person. I there have been people behind the scenes that have called me and supported me, but are afraid kind of to do it publicly. For instance, I'll give you an example. So when Maurice Bernard had me on his podcast, who's on General Hospital, I love Maurice Bernard. I didn't really know him. This wasn't about politics. He's like, your husband, when this is wrong, I want you on my show. And when I flew out to do that, I'm like, you don't understand what a big deal that is. Like, this is not about politics. This is about what's right and wrong. So, I still have, I've never not had friends who are still my friends, but how would I vote? I really vote for what's best for the country and my family. So, right now, Donald Trump is a Republican, but he's really not a politician. He's more about the country. So, what he did for us, I mean, and by the way, all the Republicans that helped us did it because it was the right thing to do. They weren't, our vote necessarily wouldn't help them in their district. We're from New Jersey. Like our vote doesn't necessarily count for their, whatever the Congress. But overall, I feel the Republicans were so genuinely helpful to us,
Do you
which
think
reached out.
if Kamala had won and Merrick Garland was still at DOJ, you would have gotten home early?
Absolutely not.
No way.
No way. Because there's so much of the Biden DOJ stink on this case. The prosecutors that came in after he was inaugurated were young, new U.S. attorneys that were added to our case who should not have been involved. There was a lot of dirty business behind the scenes with the Eastern District of New York. They were an Obama appointed judge. We had Biden appointed U.S. attorneys. You know, there's no way because there was too much business with China, I think, with Biden.
Mm.
This was somehow connected to Hunter's laptop, I think. So I think they wanted to silence him and keep him as quiet as possible, not to, draw more attention to their own crimes. It just came out with, I guess, it's the Charles McGarnacle, who was the FBI agent who was disgraced in New York. The OIG report about him said that the Bidens were using former Secret Service agents in 2017 to look up Chinese business partners and follow them and get their travel information. So I'm like, sounds kind of interesting. They were doing what they were accusing my husband of doing. So they are known to like lock up people for doing what they were doing and accuse them
Exactly
of doing
right.
something.
Yeah, they tried
So
to do that to Trump 4 times.
Yeah.
absolutely. And he knows that. And kind of that was kind of the conversation that I guess he had with Mike Lawler about like this is wrong and he
Yeah.
knows all about weaponization. So it's
Your
it's
stories are very parallel. Michael, did you have doubts that the system that you worked in for all these many, many years and the commendations and just being a New York City hero, did you have your doubts that law enforcement would work for justice and that you would come home early and be vindicated?
Yeah, when it first happened, when I was first arrested, I wasn't really upset. I just thought it was a mistake. I'm like, all right, they'll figure it out next week and I'll be cleared. And then a month goes by and I'm like, oh, I'm not cleared yet. This is going further than I thought it would be. And then we started getting discovery. And I'm looking at all this discovery that doesn't really pertain to me. And then we're getting more discovery, and then I see nothing really pertains to me, but they're still pursuing me as this, you know, stalker, this worker for the CCP, and but there was no evidence that we've seen in it. And I said, well, we have to fight this because none of this is true. None of it really pertains to me. I notified the local police. I have all my invoices. I have my surveillance reports. I notified the local police. I hired 2 retired detectives. I committed no crime, and
So,
they
so
still kept pursuing it. And then I was like, wow, this is going. Now it's a year. Now it's a year and a half.
All right.
They're not backing down. And
That's
then,
expensive. You have to have a defense lawyer and you have to
yeah,
pay
and
them
that's
to
part of
tell
their
them
plan.
that.
Their plans, the U.S. Attorney's Office is to try to bankrupt you and deplete you of all your funds. And it works for a lot of people.
Not
And I
very
said to Martha, I
justicey of
said,
the Justice Department, is it?
yeah.
Mm-mm.
And I said to Martha, I said, you want to continue this? I mean, they said they would maybe offer me a plea and maybe probation, um, but we would save, let's say, $1 million. And she says, no, we're not taking a plea. If we have to sell our house, we're going to sell our house. We are not taking a plea. You are not going before a judge and committing perjury and saying you did something wrong when you didn't. So we'll sell our house if we have to, and we're fighting this all the way. And I said,
And
okay.
thankfully, it didn't come to that, at least not that I know of.
No.
Yeah.
Um, Trump said key interviews were not disclosed and key witnesses alleged fabricated incidents. That's called perjury. Yet a jury convicted you. Are you suing New York and the feds for wrongful conviction and misconduct?
Where we're looking at options of what we can do. Unfortunately, they, meaning the FBI agents, the prosecutors, Congress members who disparaged him in a committee, a China committee hearing right after the trial, they get immunity. They get like immunity. They can say anything they want and never get charged. But in our case, someone said, if you can prove that they knew that you were innocent and they still violated your Fourth Amendment rights, like if they had evidence in hand, they knew you were innocent and still did that, then you have something to look at. And I think we have to look at all options. And it's not just for us. It's to show and make an example of them that they may not want to do that the next time. They may not want to keep spying on us for 10 years without probable cause and scaring my children and looking at all our emails and our bank records for 10 years and like they completely violated our Fourth Amendment rights, and they put our lives in danger. So listen, we do what we can. Um, Maybe this will help other people and maybe it will stop. Look, if one of them is held accountable, if there's some way they lose their bar license or they or have to be called to a committee hearing in DC and explain this case. I mean, Mike Lawler was on the radio with us a few weeks ago and he goes, I want hearings on this case. I want to know exactly what happened in this case for the American people. They deserve to know what happened here and why they protected the CCP for years and not an American family.
Yeah.
You
And
need to know.
The Chinese spy got probation. Zhang was convicted of spying for China in April 2024, handed 3 years probation, and walked out of the court that
That's right.
day.
That's right.
Why do you think they went easy on him and put you away?
Well, that's it. That's the point. That's what we want to know. And the EDNY is riddled with these cases, and SDNY. It's riddled with these cases that don't are completely imbalanced. Why?
And
You
are
know,
the
I was a former,
prosecuting attorneys still there, or did they
Only
leave
one,
with
only
Biden?
one, only really
There's
only two are still there.
two.
I believe two. I believe it appears to be that two of them were fired. So that's good news. That's very
Mhm.
good news. They kind of slithered away into their private lives, but you know what? They can't slither away. I'm sorry. It's not that it doesn't end that way as far as I'm concerned. But
You know, I was a detective NYPD. So if I took this case and brought it to a local DA in the Bronx or Manhattan, and I said, this is what I got, they would have thrown the case out because it wasn't enough to prosecute anybody. But the feds were able to take the same stuff and prosecute me. That shouldn't happen in America. This should never happen to another American. Again, the way they did this trial and the way they lied to a jury
and the judge
and the judge,
There's
and
perjury all over the place. Yeah.
I
everywhere.
just couldn't believe it. The
But the
biggest
judge and
lie,
the judge and the prosecutors and even the defense, they all must have known from years and years of trials that this doesn't smell right. This is really bad. I mean,
yeah,
you said you had your files. They must have been somebody squeezing everybody just to make this thing disappear.
Hmm.
yeah. We uh, we had all this evidence, and they never used it in my favor. They dismissed everything I told them
Mm.
happened, and they were like, "No, you notify the local police so you could commit crimes." What are you talking about?
Oh,
Notify
that
local.
was your alibi.
They
Is
were
your okay,
they
I
were
see.
spinning every good fact that I did against me. They
Yeah.
were telling the jury a whole fairy tale, and they believed this
Politics.
fairy tale. And
This
I
is
was convicted on a fairy tale.
Yes,
yeah.
it's certainly a political hit job. Did Bernie Kerik, who passed away during this time, or Rudy Giuliani, who they ruined for politically backing Trump, or your union rep when you were on the force, anyone step up for you in New York City?
Bernie.
Oh, Bernie Kerik.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because he was part of the Pipe Hitter Foundation, which has always been supporting us since this happened. And Bernie publicly supported us and always
Yeah.
for years. And Rudy, we met Rudy. Rudy gave you his combat cross. I mean, I think we are all in this army or warriors of the same persecution. And Roger Stone, who was amazing for us in the last like couple of weeks before the pardon. I mean, he had us on. He had me on twice. He had you on. I mean, and he was advocating to the president for Mike, and so were many others. And when Mike Lawler called him to tell him he was called me first, and then we patched in Mike because he was at the halfway house that he was pardoned. Mike Lawler said the president said, "I got a lot of calls about this Mike McMahon guy. Is he a good guy? Is he a good guy?"
Is it true that
He's
he's
a
really
good,
that good of a
good of a
guy?
guy. He's like, "Yes, Mr. President, he is that good of a guy." And
And Mike Lawler is explaining the story to us in the Trump accent.
it was great.
So it was pretty
It
funny.
was really great.
That is amazing. I saw some pictures of you. I think you went to Mar-a-Lago, but you didn't meet Trump, or you have met Trump.
No, we haven't been to Mar-a-Lago. We haven't met
Oh,
him yet. We haven't met Trump yet, but we were
At Bedminster.
yeah, we were
oh,
at
that's what it was.
Bedminster.
That's what
Yeah,
A
it was.
bunch
Of
of
course.
functions,
a
but
bunch of functions.
yeah.
Not
But you
yet.
haven't
Never met
yet
him
you haven't
personally.
yet got to thank him in
Soon.
person for
No,
all he's
no.
done.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
So New York City, famous for a lot of stuff, pizza, the Met, Madison Square Garden, Yankees, whatever, and a lot of crime movies, mostly because it's true. Probably right out of your case files, you could make all kinds of movies. Brooklyn's Finest, American Gangster, Copland, Serpico, some of my favorites. Do you think what happened, Mike, was bad guys like former Mayor Elliot Spitzer and Anthony Weiner, these types, not them per se, but dirty guys who wanted to get ahead of the curve, had a war against private investigators like you and Bo Dietl because you were the good guys that would stop them if you knew what was going on. So they said, "Hey, let's make sure that all PIs are not at the top of their prowess because we got some things in the shadows going on." Do you think that might have been what happened here?
I think that was part of it. I think they were trying to protect Chinese CCP members, and maybe by arresting me,
City Hall, Tammany Hall, who's they?
The FBI.
FBI,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
FBI went after
Uh,
me because
Southern
their
District of New
confidential
York and FBI were
informants.
trying to make sure that the local PIs and PD wouldn't get in the way of what they were trying to do, which is make it
Yeah,
easier for the bad guys to get away with their stuff.
yeah, I believe that had something to do with it. FBI protecting their CCP assets, going
Unbelievable.
after me, which is awful. Should never happened, and
Because
hopefully they
there are
open.
Chinese police departments in New York City.
Oh, for
You're
sure.
not
I
allowed to
mean,
go in there and work together like a episode of Justified, right? With the U.S. Marshals. Like they got their own secret world going on. If you get anywhere close to it, they want to make sure you stay away.
Yeah,
and I
And you
just
have
wish they had come to him. I mean, if they had come to Mike in 2016, the FBI, and worked with him, what would have been stopped? The Chinese balloons, the police stations, they knew these things were going on, but meaning the FBI, want to handle it themselves and their own way. I mean, I'll give you an example is that, the Chinese police station in New York City, once it was exposed by the New York Post, it took like the FBI months to raid that place. It's like, all right, what's really going on here? So there's a lot of dirty FBI agents. We know who they are. In our case, there's plenty, but there have been whistleblowers who have come forward who are amazing FBI agents. Two incredible. One was the leading fox hunt FBI agent in New York City has come forward to support us. Outspoken. And also the supervisor in the Red Bank, New Jersey field office, who was the supervisor of the case agent in this case, has come out publicly in support of us, saying I'm outraged that in my office these guys are doing this under my nose and I'm not happy about it. So how amazing is that? So the good guys are speaking out and supporting us, and we'll have more of them coming forward. So, you know, we'll
And
only
this was
talk.
all under Comey and Ray, who are both been
Oh, yeah.
fired now. So, you know, the new sheriff in town, Kash Patel, I'm assuming is supportive of trying to get all the bad elements out. And your
Definitely.
case is probably on his desk as something that was a
Sure.
miscarriage of justice.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
he knows all about our case. Obviously, he was involved in some capacity regarding like making sure the pardon goes through. I assume, I don't know, but you know, he has a mission. He's got a lot of cleaning up to do, but you know, we have examples of what can be done to do it.
Yeah.
And Pam Bondi as well. She's also there
Absolutely.
now versus Merrick Garland. Has she been supportive? Have you talked to her?
Haven't spoken to her yet, but she obviously was involved in getting this done. So we're so grateful. But you wanted to say?
Yeah, the one of the main witnesses for the government admitted on the stand to lying to the FBI agent 9 times. And I couldn't
Case
believe
dismissed, right? I mean, that's
You would
supposed
you
to
think
be
would
so.
think
tossed
case
out.
dismissed. Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
the
that means the judge. What do we think of the judge?
The judge allowed
Chinese,
she
they brought her in after they exchanged her with another judge, brought in a Chinese judge. And
Your
they
judge
also
was a Chinese judge.
my judge was a Chinese judge, yes. They exchanged one of the prosecutors for a Chinese prosecutor. So
who never had done a case before.
yeah,
So it was like they thought a lot of like bait and switch stuff happened.
everybody was Chinese except for me.
You're the only American.
Holy smokes. All right. Well,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother level of stuff I had not no, that's just corrupt.
Yeah,
Well, by the way, I mean, it's just important to note too is that regardless of anything else, in if you read the trial the transcripts, it is the prosecutor, the lead prosecutor, tells the judge that he wants to change the law, our law, to basically make it fit the case. I mean, he says that he wants to change the FAR law. That's not the words he uses, and the judge allows it. She allows him to change the law
during trial.
during trial so that he can
There was a man
convict.
named Beria in Germany who literally said, "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime." And that is what our jurisprudence was supposed to be the antithesis of, but it sounds like they went back the other direction for your
Correct.
case.
Correct.
So
Correct.
what's next for you two? Martha, another book? Mike, back to work or stay in retirement?
Well, maybe a book, and we want to help other people that are going through the same process that we went through. Uh, we couldn't believe how many people reached out to us and said, I'm going through the same process as you. I've been falsely arrested. Can you help us?" So we're in the process of helping at least 10 people
Oh, wow,
going
10.
through the same thing, falsely arrested, the same
Same playbook.
same playbook.
Same
So that
New
makes me
York.
feel good, and we're doing it, for free. We're not charging anybody. We're just giving them advice and meeting them
Yeah.
here in DC and in Philadelphia and Boston and South Jersey. So we're traveling, meeting people, and helping people every day.
Yeah.
I knew you two patriots wouldn't sit on a beach somewhere and let it all roll by. Yeah, you'd be
Yeah,
activists and get involved. And
we
here's
have
my
to.
copy right here of your book, Martha,
Thank you.
autographed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No
You're
one
welcome.
walks alone, you said, which is absolutely true. You walked this entire thing with Michael to get him where he is, which I'm sure it meant everything for morale. What was next for you?
Me?
Yeah, Michael said what he's going to do. Are you just going to do the 10 advocates and more,
I
or
mean,
you
I think I
have
can't.
another book in you?
Yeah.
Part of it. She's the
Yeah, I
catalyst
think
behind
so. I
it.
think I have to take what I've experienced and use it to help others. And I become I'll tell you, it's so similar when you write a story for a series or something as a writer. In the way you think about characters, it's so applicable to investigations and trying to figure out the look at things a different way. And through this process, I've become much more of a, I would say, investigator
Yeah.
and finding those rabbit holes that lead to these incredible discoveries. I mean, without that kind of investigation, we wouldn't have found out that this man was CCP Wuhan official. And he was like the mayor of Wuhan. I mean, like what? But because I found enough, I just kept going and looking and digging and finding. And I'd like to be able to use that skill for something and someone and other people who, when this happens to you, you can't see straight. I mean, you're emotionally in a vacuum of terror. So if we can help bring people out of that and give them some hope, then I feel like God has put us in this position to do that. And people come to you for a reason. So if they come into our lives, I want to be able to help them. So that
You
first,
certainly make a good screenplay if you decide
Yeah.
to get into directing or producing something
I'd
like
love to do
that.
that too.
Yeah.
Have
For
you
sure.
considered because of all this leaving the city?
Well, we don't live in the city. We live in Jersey. We're
Well,
actually
leaving
living.
the tri-state area, like getting the heck out of
I
that area.
know. Well, we've been in Florida for a couple of weeks, just kind of chilling out a little bit with family, and no, that means you're giving up then if you do that. That means that
We got to stay in the fight. We got to help other
yeah.
people.
But
I'm
you won
Jersey.
already. You're free. Now you can go live free anywhere you want and
No,
do
Yeah.
what
I'm
you're
in Jersey.
doing. I
Yeah.
get
I'm
you.
Jersey. I'm Jersey. I don't care. I'm a fighter. We don't back down. We don't surrender. We keep going in, Despite that, we have to keep going. But we're New Yorkers in Jersey. We have to keep fighting for sure.
I get it.
We're
All
too
right.
young.
Well,
We're too young, right?
Gotta
well, you're
keep
literally
going.
the fabric of the society, so it's good. They need people like you to stay
Thank
and fight the
Thank
good
you.
fight.
Thank
So, well, Mike and Martha, I just want to thank you for your time. I want God to bless you continually because it really has been amazing. I started this show in like 2002, so really you've been like my first and most recent show. So I just think you guys are the fantastic. I'm so happy that it was a happily ever after story here. Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, social media. Like you said, you might have another book coming, but if you have something else coming, let us know.
So you can follow me on X. It's Martha Byrne 1010, and on Facebook. And I'm always putting out more information. We're going to be hopefully writing a book soon about his experience together. We're going to be doing that, and just keep supporting. And thanks to everybody for supporting us. I mean, without the support of the fans and the people who followed us, and we would never have gotten where we are today without those voices that back you up and keep you afloat. So thank you for that, and just stay tuned. There's a lot more to come.
All right. Third act. We can't wait. That's gonna be great. Mike, anything besides
I'm
Happy
not
New
on
Year?
social media. You can follow me through her social media. I'm prominently displayed on her posts and
Somewhere.
pictures and
That's true.
so that's my social media all through her. So
And no speaking engagements or anything on the news that we can tune into?
That's coming.
That's
That's
coming
coming.
soon.
So you stay
Okay.
tuned to that too. We will be going out speaking publicly and probably across the country and doing some more advocacy that way too.
Wonderful. All right.
Education.
if the listeners can, buy the book, it
Yeah.
explains the whole situation from start to finish, and it's pretty compelling.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
And you can also
Absolutely.
go to the pipehitterfoundation.org, pipehitterfoundation.org, and there's a whole page about our story and that organization. I mean, just to support that organization, and they support first responders, military who've been falsely accused, and they were the first organization to actually come out and say, "We believe you." So if you can go to their page and support whatever you want, just to educate on who else is going through this and support that, that would be amazing.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on with us. Hang on, everybody. I will be right back. This is goodbye for a little while. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, even while I'm gone, and pass it around, even in reruns. We only grow with your help, and still ad-free. Back in August. Enjoy the reruns. Maybe off air, we'll get that piece in our time. I'll work on it in Europe. Glory to God. At Heartland Journal, we don't just write about the Heartland, we're part of it. Whether you're in Montana cattle country, next to an Idaho data center in a drought, or from an Ohio manufacturing town, this is your platform. Got a story tip? A perspective we need to hear? We want it. This podcast and website exists because readers like you step up. Help us keep the lights on and the reporting honest. Visit heartlandjournal.com or our Substack, Heartland Journal, and subscribe to our ad-free premium content. Together, we're keeping authentic journalism alive in Middle America. I'm Steve Abramowitz, your host of the Heartland Journal podcast. Thanks for listening.
It's a long way to Nashville from that Napa Valley vine. Put me on a road less traveled. Lord, now I know why. God knew I'd get there in His perfect time.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.